All right, so if you were here last week, we introduced something new, a new segment to our worship experience here at Trinity on the weekends. It's called a Worldview, biblical worldview segment. And the reason, right before the sermon, I'm going to share about moral, cultural, social issues for two reasons. We want you to be informed so you can pray, so that you can be empowered to act. Now, if you want the full vision why we're doing this, then jump online, watch the beginning of last week's message, and I kind of share the vision behind it. I do want to warn those of you that are watching on Facebook right now, last service, they canceled the service. They said we violated something. So I would encourage you, if that happens again, just go to trinitytoday.com and you could watch it live through our website. Heads up. So, how often have you heard this phrase? Politics doesn't belong in the pulpit. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Politics doesn't belong in the pulpit. We've had people leave our staff, leave our church. Politics doesn't belong in the pulpit. Now, 3 questions. They're rhetorical. You don't have to answer. Do you agree, disagree, or you simply don't know? Do you agree with that phrase, don't agree with that phrase, or you simply don't know? Consider this. Those of you that may have questions about this, I preached an entire sermon. There was a series in 2020 called Let's Talk, and I dedicated an entire message to politics and the Bible. There's actually a term called theopolitics. Jesus was theopolitical, Paul was theopolitical, the Old Testament prophets were theopolitical. If you want a whole sermon on it, then jump online, go to September of 2020, and you'll be able to listen to that message. But let's apply that logic to other important at times life-defining issues. Politics doesn't belong in the pulpit. Well, should we say race relations doesn't belong in the pulpit? How about abortion? Talking about abortion doesn't belong in the pulpit. Religious freedom issues don't belong in the pulpit. Domestic abuse doesn't belong in the pulpit. Sex trafficking doesn't belong in the pulpit. Money doesn't belong in the pulpit. Where do you finally draw the line and say, what does belong then, in the pulpit? What should we as preachers and teachers and ministers, what should we address from a biblical worldview point? Well, in everything, because really there are no topics that are off limits, or there should be no topics off limits to God. The Bible does have an answer for all topics and all challenges that we're facing in our life, whether it is a clear word from God, a biblical law, or a principle that's found in the Word of God. And no church should put a gag order on God. God should not be muted from speaking truth. Now, what I think most people mean is this, and I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. Partisanship does not belong in the pulpit. Now, partisanship means a strong, sometimes blind adherence to a particular party. Yes, I don't believe partisanship belongs in the pulpit, but we have to address the moral, social issues. How important is it? Well, in 2019, a professor from Eastern Illinois University, who happens to be a Baptist preacher, Professor Burge, he surveyed more than 1,000 Protestants, and he asked if they heard their pastor discuss any political issue from the pulpit over the previous year, and he gave a list of 10 political issues. And the list ranged from simple encouragement to vote on election day to hot-button issues like abortion and gay rights, the professor said in this research. Of the respondents, 30% hadn't heard any issue addressed of the top 10 issues in their church. 25% had heard of one of those 10 issues, religious liberty, which was the most common. And then get this, only 1 out of every 4 Christians heard a sermon about gay rights or abortion. And just 16% had ever heard Trump's name mentioned from the pulpit in that previous year. And what he summed up was this. The primary reason was, you could probably guess it, fear. Preachers today are simply afraid of the controversy. But God has called all of us to be his messengers. All of us should address important topics, regardless of the consequences. We are to remain true to our calling and speak the truth in love, speak truth to power, as the Old Testament prophets did. And as it says in Ephesians chapter 5, we are to expose the darkness by shining the light of truth upon it.